Namaste. Psychoanalysis and philosophy. I want to be happy, but I cannot be. This is the theme, which is everyone's theme. We all want to be happy, but find some obstacles on the way, which somehow don't allow us to be happy. And it happens even more so as we advance in age. So let us explore this topic, which sounds very paradoxical, with our psychoanalysis consultant, Mr. Himanshu Vaidya. Namaste, Mr. Vaidya.
Namaste.
Mr. Vaidya, what do you mean when we say, I want to be happy?
Happiness is like love and socialism. It means everything to everybody. For some people, being happy is to have sense pleasure. Good food, good music, good sex. For some, it is possession, to have a good house, good car. For some, it is power and authority. For some, it is advancement of an ideology. For some, it's spiritual freedom and spiritual advancement. For some, it is fulfilling relationships. For some, it is just peace. And for some, it is even the difficult parts of it, to take revenge. So for some, paradoxically, taking revenge is a great source of happiness. And for some, even giving pain to oneself is a source of happiness. And for some, self-destruction is a source of happiness. And for some, destruction of somebody or something else is a source of happiness. So, human beings are creatures of pleasure and happiness. Human beings also are creatures of variety. So, in a variety of ways, we seek out happiness. And there are many ways of categorizing different types of happiness that we seek. One way to categorize is to say there is a category of sense pleasures. There is a category of ego pleasures, which includes power, authority, position, ideology, and so on. There is a category of emotional pleasures. There is a category of intellectual and creative pleasures. And there is a category of spiritual pleasures. So all this put together form the whole canvas of happiness. And in that, we seek in particular ways which is unique to ourselves. So when we say we want to be happy on any of these areas, we want to move forward in a way that we feel pleased. And this pleased is a very wide term. It also involves for some giving pain to oneself or self-destruction, which is where psychoanalysis brings to us knowledge about masochism and self-destruction as also being roots to pleasure for some people, where the conscious feeling is of pain, but there is a pre-conscious or unconscious feeling, at times even a conscious feeling also of pleasure accompanying that pain.
Can you tell us more about this paradox, which is like everyone's difficulty?
The paradox is we all want to be happy. On this, there is a consensus, but none of us is able to completely be happy. So the ultimate goal of the human mind is to have ceaseless feeling of pleasure without a moment of pain. And we know by direct experience of our own and of everyone who has lived before us and along with us that it's not possible in this world. And that is a natural frustration of human existence. Now we go into why this is so. Because once we realize that it is not possible, our desire cannot be fulfilled. Our desire for ceaseless continuing happiness cannot be fulfilled. So we start going into an inquiry as to why this is so. And a list of answers come out of that inquiry. And these answers depend upon as much your philosophical orientation, as much your rational thought, and as much your experience. We are not in a scientific area. We are partly in the scientific area, partly in the philosophical area, and partly in spiritual area. So based on this, we get answers. Now let us see what the answers are. And here we also have to be aware of our search for omnipotence. That at some deeper level we believe, or at least hope, that somebody has answers to all the questions. And the quest for omnipotence can be saved from disintegration, which is very difficult to bear. So we start believing that somebody has answers to all the questions, but the fact is nobody ever had, and nobody ever till now ever has had answers to all the questions. So no system, no person had answers to all the questions, and that includes answers to the questions that we are asking on happiness. And therefore, what we have is a basket full of answers, but nothing like the answer. So let us look at what we have, even if it is not perfect. First answer that we get is that the universe itself is in evolution. And in that process of evolution, all feelings have to be lived out and processed through. So feelings of anger, fear, pain, envy, shame, they are as much to be processed as feelings of ecstasy, bliss, delight, happiness, enthusiasm, and so on. So it is inbuilt into the very design of the universe that in its entire history of evolution, these things have to get processed. It is the fundamental principle of the universe, and therefore our desire is in conflict with the fundamental design of the evolution of the universe. And therefore, we can maximize to the extent that we can, but we cannot completely eliminate what we don't want. So, really speaking, I should not be using the word maximize, but we are in a situation of optimization, not of maximization. So that is one answer. The second answer is from a soul point of view, that the purpose of the soul is to experience all these emotions. And the soul wants to experience even those emotions which the surface part of us does not like. And therefore, although one part of us wants ceaseless pleasure, another part of us wants variety, including a bit of pain and those unpleasant emotions that we don't want at the surface. So that is second. The third answer is that actually there is pain which can be converted into intense pleasure, which says, this answer says that pain is nothing but a condensed form of pleasure. So condensed that we can't bear it. So that is a third answer that we have. And of course, there are implications of each of these answers. Fourth answer that we have is related to the infinity of desire. That it is not the problem in the outside world or a very fundamental question of a principle of the universe. Rather, it is something specific to the human integer. And there, the infinity of desire is the problem. That the world is too small to really fulfill the infinity of desire. And there are too many infinities of desire. And they are in conflict with each other. Then we have this another answer of the conflict between the body and the mind. That the body wants homeostasis and the mind wants unending excitation. And there is a fundamental conflict built into the very hardware of the system. Then we have the reality conditions, the socio-economic conditions in which we live, the historical and the planetary conditions in which we live, which don't allow for satisfaction of desire and therefore don't allow us to be happy all the time. And then there is a conflict with other human beings and other beings, because often in many situations, happiness becomes a zero-sum game. My happiness or his happiness, only one can survive. And lastly, then we have something which psychoanalysis tells us, which is very interesting, that in many cases, we love pain. There is a wish to suffer. And because there is a wish to suffer, there is a conflict inside of us, that one part wants happiness, another part actually derives happiness by pain. So there is this whole area of masochism, a whole area of self-destruction, a whole area of self-punishment because of guilt and shame, and a whole area of just pleasure out of pain, pure into itself, unconcerned with guilt or shame. And all of this, what is oversimplified in terms of the term called death drive, death instinct, or thanatos, all this is there. And therefore, we see this conflict that although we want to be happy, we cannot. And why we cannot? These are some of the answers. And possibly, if you put all of this together, we may get a partial answer to a very difficult question.
Can we explore deeper into the psychological aspects of these inner obstacles?
The inner obstacles are many. First, let us take the negative aspects. So, masochism is a very strong element of getting happiness by giving pain to oneself. And in different ways, giving up pleasure, or what we would call happiness in normal terms. Then we have self-destruction. And there is a secret delight in self-destruction. Then we have self-attack because of guilt and shame. Then we have self-attack because of aggression, which is bottled up, which cannot be expressed towards somebody. Then we have this whole zone of envy, where a part of us cannot see our own happiness and our own goodness. Then we have the fear of disintegration anxiety. What if we just disintegrate into pieces, if we just become too exuberant and happy? Then we have this fear of going crazy in happiness, a fear of mania taking over, a fear of going crazy because of too much of happiness. Then we have a fear that the happiness will be succeeded by something very painful, and happiness cannot endure for long. So better tone it down. Otherwise, when it ends and the painful situation starts, it will become unbearable. And on top of it, we have traumas from childhood. We have real life limitations because of our socio-cultural conditions, economic conditions, physical health conditions. And then, because of all that has happened, there is a pent-up fear, pent-up effect of what I call the 7 difficult affects: anger, fear, pain, guilt, shame, envy, inferiority. And of course, then we have a range of traumatic experiences from childhood, which have been elaborated by each of the schools in psychoanalysis. So these are obstacles of different types, some in reality, some in the subjective world, some in the conscious, pre-conscious area of the mind, some very deep in the unconscious area of the mind, some involving phenomena of adult age, some involving phenomena of very early life. So all these become obstacles to our experiencing long-term enduring happiness. And therefore, to be happy for a long time in a ceaseless way not only requires luck, but a lot of self-training. It is not a default condition. And that is where long spiritual training is required to really enhance or maximize or optimize rather the state of happiness. It's not easy to preserve that state.
Then what is the way out? I mean, is catharsis a way out?
Partly yes, because what stops us are three different issues. The traumatic issues from the past, our reality condition in the present, and our unconscious structure at the present. So these three things are very important. Of course, the future is also important, but these three predominantly. So one of the things that can be taken care of is the past in terms of the bottled up affect by going in for catharsis. So catharsis is a very important element on this journey, so that we are not in the grip of the past, and the less we are in the grip of the difficult past, at least, the easier it is for us to maintain positive states of happiness. One element, of course, is the element of reality and outer tragedy, because they can always happen in reality. So one part is catharsis, second part is building up our capacity for reality, and third part is luck. Luck is also a very important element in this area.
How does the socio-economic condition play a part in all this?
Very important, both directly in terms of satisfying or not satisfying our desires, and secondly, indirectly by creating stress upon the parents or family members, and thereby stress upon us and trauma upon us. So in both ways, the reality works on us. And therefore, when we talk of reality, the socio-economic condition, the historical time, the government's welfare measures, all of them are important. And the cultural situation also is very important. Take, for example, if you look at the Global Happiness Index, some of the countries where happiness has been found to be very high are economically almost at the lower end of the spectrum. And some of the countries where economics is very good, still the happiness index is not very high. So we require both. There is an element of economics, history, science and technology, and an element of culture and spirituality. Science also plays a very big role, especially because of the advances in medical sciences. Because many of our tragedies used to be because of the medical problems. And the same is true for agriculture. So medicine and agriculture are very important elements of this whole part. And then, of course, culture plays a very big part, which we see in the Global Happiness Index. And then we also have the more spiritual and positivity oriented a culture is, easier it is for individuals to really maintain states of happiness. In India, unfortunately, we see today we are getting the worst of all the worlds. So despite having so much of spiritual knowledge, nothing operates in life, and we are at one of the lower ends of the happiness spectrum.
Does therapy offer a way out?
Yes, it does. In both these areas of catharsis, freedom from the past, as well as in building capacity for facing future. And third is for reality acceptance, because one part of it is to accept the natural frustrations of human existence. And that itself increases our happiness. Because once we accept reality completely and mourn over what cannot be had, that holdback goes away and we start becoming better off, slightly happier than we were before. So therapy does help us in building capacity and in getting freedom from the past. Both ways it helps us. Also in reality acceptance. And I think with positive psychology playing an increasing role and getting more research, more inputs from that area will flow into other schools of therapy also. And this question of um, happiness will gain more significance. We'll have to move away from the Freudian idea of the goal of therapy being to make a person move from unbearable unhappiness to bearable unhappiness. From that to something positive. That I think is going to be a movement as we start focusing more and more on the positive goals in therapy.
How about holistic healing helping in this regard?
It gives a variety of tools to individuals and really empowers the individual, be it Reiki, pranic healing, Tai Chi, or other tools, other areas of holistic healing. And what they do is not only they empower the individual to overcome the past, but also to keep overcoming problems which are accumulating in the unconscious mind on an everyday basis. And lastly, which is most important, is many of these practices actually induce a happy state of mind. For example, if you do Reiki or pranic healing for half an hour or 20 minutes, even 15 minutes, within 15 minutes, the state of mind does undergo a change. I'm not talking about extreme situations of severe depression or that kind of thing. But for most individuals, 70% of individuals, the state of mind undergoes a change. And these holistic healing methods are very powerful in very quickly inducing a pleasant state of mind and holding it there. And almost with practice, it becomes a on-demand capability. Not to the extreme. Nobody becomes omnipotent, but we are substantially empowered to maintain far longer positive states of mind, most of the times on demand, using tools of holistic healing. So very useful set of basket full of tools there.
And how about spirituality offering some help and even a long-term solution?
Look at everything. Today, spirituality, holistic healing, and positive psychology. These are the three sources from where best insights and tools for enhancing happiness are coming rather. And in spirituality, because the whole concern is with causeless bliss and to be free from dependence on objects or events for happiness. It strikes at the very fundamental level of the problem. So spirituality is a very fundamental solution, and in spirituality, most schools have very powerful techniques, be it meditative techniques, mantra techniques, visualization techniques, or pranayam or yoga techniques, but most schools have very powerful techniques to enter into the state of peace and bliss. And for that, it's an everyday must-do activity. I mean, this is the center of all that they do. That they have to get into a state of peace and bliss every day, twice or thrice a day. That is the center of all that they do. So spirituality does offer a solution. Not that everybody can measure up to it or do it or become spiritual, but there is a set of tools and processes available for those who are interested.
So essentially, it helps out in removing the obstacles to happiness in one way or the other.
That is one. And second, in bringing the state of peace and bliss and extending that state on demand. And that works to the tune of 70 to 75%. Nobody can do it 100%.
Okay, we come to the last question. How do you see the future of this paradox or this issue in terms of the research standpoint?
I think the significance of this is already come into the center stage. So people are talking about more about happiness domestic product rather than gross domestic product. So in policy making, in economics, people are realizing that economic growth and happiness growth are not the same. And the divergence between the two can be very difficult for societies. Secondly, at individual levels, people are realizing that this modern way of living, modernity is not really providing solutions for peace, bliss, happiness, and the pleasures which are offered by the corporate world today are not enough, and there is an intrinsic desire and hunger in human beings for peace, bliss, and a separate kind of happiness. And with that in mind, spirituality, holistic healing, and positive psychology are coming to the center stage, and people are going more in terms of inner explorations, spiritual explorations, and a more organic and natural and happy way of living in opposition to the corporate model presented to us by modernity. So my feeling is that in times to come, research and tools from all these three areas will become far more mainstream in everyone's life than they are today. And you'll also see development, very rapid development of all the three areas, including possibly in the area of medicines, more and better medicines for mood solutions. I mean, I'm not talking about a pill for peace and a pill for bliss, but that is the ultimate ideal. But short of it, some progress on that part, I think will happen, and we'll see a lot of innovations in this area. Focus and innovation in this area, both. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we should see that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vaidya. Again, this was a very, very interesting topic. I mean, to see, pursue happiness and then not being able to do so. So look at it as a paradox and kind of open it up. Thank you so much. Do write to us at hvindia@gmail.com. Namaste.
Namaste.